Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard when that happened and was initially ordered to go guard the inauguration of Joe Biden. But because of the politicization of the Biden administration, my orders were revoked. And ultimately, because of the politics that were being played inside the Defense Department by the previous administration.
But do you support the decision made on January 6th to send the National Guard here to defend the Capitol?
I support the decision that President Trump made and requesting the National Guard that was denied.
So you do not.
President Trump
you do not support the decision.
You do not for the National Guard
to send the National Guard here to defend the Capitol.
Hello, Patriots. Welcome back to Signal 76, where we cut through the mainstream media noise and deliver the truth that Washington doesn't want you to hear. I'm your host, and today we're diving deep into an absolutely explosive Senate hearing that exposes the shocking double standards and wasteful spending that's plaguing our government right now. What you're about to witness will make your blood boil, but stick with me because this is exactly why we need strong conservative leadership more than ever. Before we get started, Patriots, I need you to do something critical for our movement. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that like button, and make sure you comment below with your thoughts because YouTube's algorithm is working against conservative voices like ours. We're building an army of informed patriots, and every single one of you matters in this fight for our nation's future. Stay until the very end, because I'm going to reveal something that will completely change how you view this administration's priorities.
Senator Murphy, you're up.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here today. I wanted to build on some of the questions that Senator Schatz was asking, just to try to build a fact predicate for some of the tough spending decisions we're going to have to make here. Just to confirm, I heard you say with respect to the gift of the plane from Qatar that we do not yet have a signed MOU with the government of Qatar. Is that right?
Correct. We're in the process of working through that.
And did you also say we don't have a signed contract with the company that is going to do the work? Or did you say that we have a contract, you're just not willing to disclose the terms?
The terms should not be disclosed of anything related to an aircraft of this type.
So in 2018, when the contract was signed with Boeing to do the upgrades or the new contracts for Air Force One, the terms of that contract were disclosed. They were made public. In fact, it was the Trump administration that issued a press release giving the total as $3.9 billion. Are you saying this time around, even after you sign the contract, you're not going to make public any of the terms of the contract?
I wasn't involved in that previous administration decision, but we're happy to take a look.
The Air Force testified before the House that that contract would likely deliver the new Air Force Ones by the 2028 timeframe. It doesn't stand to reason that you will be able to retrofit the plane from Qatar much sooner than 2028. So I'm trying to understand what the gap is that we're trying to fill. If this contract ends up being $500 million and the gap only ends up being 6 months, that doesn't sound like a wise investment for this committee to make.
Senator, I would defer to the expertise of the Air Force as far as timing of modifications and when that would happen, but there's also been delay after delay after delay on the Boeing side, so I don't know that's a firm fixed date yet, unfortunately, can be counted on.
So obviously the underlying question here is what is going to happen to the plane at the end of Trump's presidency. The president said on May 12th that this plane would be transferred to his presidential library at the end of his term. Is that your understanding of what is going to happen to this plane?
The president said that. That's my understanding, although I would look at what comes out in the MOU.
But why would we ask the American taxpayer to spend upwards of $1 billion on a plane that would then only be used for a handful of months and then transferred directly to the president? That doesn't sound like a wise use of taxpayer dollars.
A lot of the capabilities, as you know, Senator, of that particular platform are and should remain classified. So there are reasons why you might modify, even for a short period of time, an aircraft to ensure the safety and security of the President of the United States.
But when do you believe that those upgrades would be made? How long would the president have it before it got transferred to his personal possession?
That would be a determination of the Air Force that would take hold of it and make those modifications within whatever time window they believe gets it to the place where it need to be.
Yeah, I think this is extraordinary, Mr. Chairman. We're talking about a pretty massive investment of appropriations dollars into a plane that the Secretary is saying is currently planned to be transferred personally to the President. There's a lot of other pending needs that we need to fund. This would seem to be low on the list. Mr. Secretary, one final question. Obviously, you know that there is a concern in the public about a double standard that is applied to protest, sometimes protest that turns violent. The president, when he came into office, issued pardons to the individuals that attacked the United States Capitol, including those individuals who beat savagely police officers. You have deployed the National Guard and readied Marines in a way that many people think is unnecessary given the state and the local resources. So maybe let me ask the question this way so that you can assuage people's concerns that there is a double standard. The National Guard was deployed here on January 6th, and that was a decision made by the Department of Defense. Do you support that decision? Do you believe that that was the right decision to deploy the National Guard to defend the Capitol on January 6th?
All I know is it's the right decision to be deploying the National Guard in Los Angeles to defend ICE agents who deserve to be defended in the execution of their jobs.
But I think it's important to know whether you think it was also important to have the National Guard defending the United States Capitol when there were violent protesters here on the president's behalf, to make sure that folks know that you care about protest, whether it's against the president or on behalf of the president.
Senator, I was in the Washington, D.C. National Guard when that happened and was initially ordered to go guard the inauguration of Joe Biden. But because of the politicization of the Biden administration, my orders were revoked. And ultimately, because of the politics that were being played inside the Defense Department by the previous administration.
But do you support the decision made on January 6th to send the National Guard here to defend
I support the decision that President Trump made and requesting the National Guard that was denied.
So you do not.
President Trump
you do not support the decision.
Support
you do not
for the National Guard
decision to send the National Guard here to defend the Capitol. I think that speaks to the worry that many Americans have that there is a double standard, that you are not willing to defend against attacks made on our democracy by supporters of the president, but you are willing to deploy the National Guard to protect against protesters who are criticizing the president. That's not how our taxpayer dollars are supposed to work. They're supposed to be used to defend the United States, no matter the nature of the political affiliation of the protesters. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
What we witnessed in this Senate hearing is nothing short of a masterclass in liberal hypocrisy and fiscal irresponsibility. Let me break down what really happened here, because the mainstream media certainly won't give you the full picture. We've got Senator Chris Murphy, a Connecticut Democrat who's built his entire career on attacking President Trump and conservative values, trying to create a controversy where none exists while completely ignoring the real issues facing our nation. First, let's talk about this Qatar aircraft situation. The defense secretary is being grilled about a plane that Qatar wants to give to the United States. Now, patriots, think about this for a moment. Here we have a foreign ally willing to provide aircraft to support our nation's defense capabilities, and what do the Democrats do? They immediately start looking for ways to turn this into a scandal. This is the same party that had no problem with Hillary Clinton's Clinton Foundation receiving millions from foreign governments. But suddenly they're concerned about transparency when it involves anything connected to President Trump. The secretary made it crystal clear that contract terms for presidential aircraft must remain classified for obvious security reasons. Any rational person understands that revealing the specific capabilities and modifications of presidential aircraft would be a massive security risk. But Murphy keeps pushing, demanding public disclosure of information that could literally endanger the president's life. This isn't about transparency, patriots. This is about creating talking points for their next hit piece. Now, let's address the elephant in the room that Murphy keeps harping on. He's absolutely obsessed with the fact that President Trump mentioned this aircraft might eventually go to his presidential library. Patriots, every single president has items that go to their presidential library. That's literally how presidential libraries work. Obama has Air Force One artifacts. Bush has artifacts. Clinton has artifacts. But somehow when it's President Trump, it becomes a conspiracy theory about personal enrichment. What Murphy conveniently ignores is that presidential libraries serve the American people. They are educational institutions that preserve our nation's history. Millions of Americans visit these libraries every year to learn about our presidents and our democracy. Having presidential aircraft on display serves an important educational and historical purpose. But the Democrats can't stand the idea that President Trump will have a presidential library that showcases his incredible achievements for the American people. The real scandal here isn't the aircraft. The real scandal is Murphy's blatant attempt to create a double standard when it comes to defense spending. Where was this fiscal responsibility when the Biden administration was sending billions of dollars to Ukraine with virtually no oversight? Where was this concern about taxpayer money when they were funding gain-of-function research or Green New Deal boondoggles? Suddenly they care about defense spending when it involves protecting President Trump. But here's where things get really interesting, patriots. Murphy then pivots to what he thinks is his gotcha moment about January 6th. He's trying to create this false narrative about double standards in law enforcement. Let me set the record straight on what really happened here, because the secretary's response reveals something the mainstream media has been hiding from you. The secretary reveals that he was actually a member of the Washington, D.C. National Guard during January 6th. He was initially ordered to guard President Biden's inauguration, but those orders were revoked because of political games being played by the previous administration. Think about that for a moment. Here's a military officer who was ready to serve, ready to do his duty, but the politicized Biden Defense Department pulled him off the assignment. This is exactly the kind of weaponization of our military that conservatives have been warning about. Murphy's entire line of questioning about January 6th is designed to perpetuate the Democrats' favorite narrative. They want to keep relitigating January 6th while ignoring the real threats facing our nation today. They pardon criminals who rioted and burned down cities during the summer of 2020, but they want to keep prosecuting Americans who walked through the Capitol building. That's the real double standard, patriots. The secretary's response about supporting President Trump's decisions is exactly what we want to hear from our defense officials. We want military leaders who support the commander-in-chief, not ones who play political games or leak classified information to the press. We want leaders who understand that their job is to defend America, not to score political points with the Washington establishment. Now let's talk about what Murphy completely ignores in his questioning. While he's worried about aircraft spending, we got a border crisis that's costing taxpayers hundreds of billions of dollars. We've got Chinese spy balloons flying over our country. We've got adversaries building up their military capabilities while Democrats want to cut defense spending. But Murphy is focused on trying to create a scandal about an aircraft that would enhance presidential security. The deployment of the National Guard to protect ICE agents is exactly what we should be doing. These are federal law enforcement officers trying to enforce our immigration laws, and they're being threatened by radical activists. The secretary is absolutely right to deploy resources to protect them. That's not a double standard. That's called doing your job. What we're witnessing here is the same pattern we've seen for years. Democrats create controversies out of nothing while ignoring real problems. They demand transparency when it suits their political purposes, but ignore actual corruption in their own ranks. They lecture about fiscal responsibility while wasting trillions on their pet projects. Patriots, this hearing perfectly illustrates why we need to take back the Senate and expand our House majority. We need legislators who will focus on real issues instead of political theater. We need representatives who will support our military and law enforcement instead of second-guessing every decision they make. We need leaders who will secure our border instead of playing games with national security. The mainstream media will spin this hearing as some kind of victory for Murphy, but what it really shows is the bankruptcy of the Democratic agenda. They've got nothing to offer the American people except more investigations, more regulations, and more government waste. Meanwhile, President Trump and Republican leaders are focused on making America strong again. This aircraft controversy is just another example of the Democrats' Trump derangement syndrome. They cannot accept that President Trump won the election fair and square, so they're going to attack every single decision his administration makes. They'll turn routine security measures into conspiracies. They'll turn standard presidential privileges into scandals. They'll turn patriotic service members into political pawns. But here's what they don't understand, patriots. The American people see right through their games. We elected President Trump because we wanted someone who would put America first, and that's exactly what he's doing. We wanted someone who would stand up to our enemies and support our allies, and that's exactly what he's doing. We wanted someone who would secure our borders and protect our citizens, and that's exactly what he's doing. The Qatar aircraft situation is actually a perfect example of President Trump's America First diplomacy in action. Here we have an ally that wants to contribute to American security capabilities. Instead of demanding taxpayer money, they're offering to provide resources. This is the kind of deal-making that President Trump has been famous for his entire career. But the Democrats can't give him credit for anything, so they turn it into a controversy. What's really revealing about Murphy's questioning is how he completely ignores the security justifications provided by the defense secretary. The secretary explains that there are classified capabilities that justify these modifications, but Murphy doesn't care. He's more interested in political theater than national security. This is exactly the kind of reckless approach to defense issues that makes America less safe. Patriots, we need to understand what's really at stake here. This isn't just about one aircraft or one hearing. This is about whether we're going to have a government that prioritizes American security and American interests, or whether we're going to continue down the path of political investigations and bureaucratic games. This is about whether our military leaders will be allowed to do their jobs without constant political interference. The defense secretary's responses in this hearing show exactly the kind of leadership we need. He's focused on the mission, not the politics. He's protecting classified information instead of leaking it to score political points. He's supporting the president's decisions instead of undermining them. This is what competent government looks like. Patriots. Meanwhile, Murphy's performance shows everything that's wrong with the current Democratic Party. They're more interested in creating sound bites than solving problems. They're more concerned with attacking President Trump than protecting America. They're more focused on the next cable news hit than the next national security briefing. This hearing also reveals the incredible bias in how defense spending is covered by the media and evaluated by Democrats. When it's spending that they support, like sending money overseas or funding their green energy projects, cost is no object. But when it's spending that actually protects American leaders and advances American interests, suddenly they become fiscal hawks. The American people deserve better than this kind of political theater. We deserve representatives who will work together to secure our borders, strengthen our military, and protect our citizens. We deserve leaders who will support our law enforcement instead of second-guessing them at every turn. We deserve a government that puts America first instead of playing political games. Patriots, this is why your voice matters so much. This is why we need you to stay engaged, stay informed, and stay active in this fight for our country's future. The mainstream media won't tell you the truth about hearings like this. They'll spin it to fit their narrative and ignore the real issues at stake. But together, we can cut through their propaganda and hold our leaders accountable. Make sure you're subscribed to Signal 76, because we're going to keep bringing you the truth that Washington doesn't want you to hear. Share this video with every patriot you know, because we need to spread the word about what's really happening in our government. Comment below and let me know what you think about Murphy's performance and the defense secretary's responses. The fight for America's future is happening right now, patriots, and we need every single one of you in this battle. Together, we're going to take back our country and restore the principles that made America great. Until next time, this is Signal 76, and we'll see you in the next video.